We come to this place for magic. We come to the Bladtcast to laugh, to cry, occasionally be revolted, to pretend that you care. Because we need that, all of us. That indescribable feeling we get when the sound begins to prematurely dim, preserving that sacred runtime that is always measured in full minutes. And we go somewhere we've never been before. Not just entertained, but somehow reborn. Together. From guests who feel obligated to come on because Christian used to work for that famous guy, to hearing all about that one time Captain EO went home with a stripper. Dazzling conversation on tiny earbuds that repeatedly fall out, or a huge pair of Beats by Dre that never fit, but you spent $200 on them, so you wear them anyway. Sound we all can feel. Somehow, heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Our hosts feel like the best part of us, and stories feel perfect and powerful. Anyone who thinks being on the show will help them get on to bigger shows, it won't. The Bladtcast. We make podcasts better.
Hi, I'm Conrad Bain. We have a lot of fun here on the Bladtcast, but tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about the 1988 film Die Hard. But before we do that, we have to have an honest and important conversation for you and your whole family. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's a simple fact, and the evidence is indisputable. First and foremost, a Christmas movie features Christmas songs, and this movie has 3 of the absolute best. Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Winter Wonderland, and of course, my favorite, Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC. Now, I know the case is often made that Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie because it was released in the summer. Well, let me tell you about a few other movies that were released in the summer, and you can tell me as to whether or not you think that they're Christmas movies. Holiday Inn, released in August 1942. It is one of the most famous Christmas movies ever, thanks to its debut of the Oscar-winning staple, White Christmas. Christmas in Connecticut, August 1945. Lady and the Tramp, June 1955. And the 80s was just a time filled with summertime Christmas cheer. Trading Places, June 1983. Gremlins, June 1984. And of course, Die Hard released in the summer. Die Hard 2, by the way, also released in the summer. Also a Christmas movie. But if you want to dispute any of those films, or possibly even all of those films, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you Miracle on 34th Street, released June 4th, 1947. Yes, Virginia, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Some have made the case that A Christmas Story needs to be something that could only happen at Christmas. Many of the events of Die Hard could happen any other night. However, the fact of the matter is that this movie isn't just set at Christmas. It begins on Christmas Eve, and by the time it ends, it is Christmas Day. John McClane is only heading to Los Angeles because it's Christmas. The Nakatomi Corporation is having its Christmas party on Christmas Eve. That's a little iffy. I might give you that. But that is when they're having it. They're a Japanese company. Hey, it's the 80s. Not everything makes sense. But the movie happens on Christmas. And you may or may not know Die Hard is based on a book. It's a great book by Roderick Thorpe called Nothing Lasts Forever. It's a sequel to the book The Detective. Well, the book that the film The Detective was based on, starring Frank Sinatra. Fun fact, the lead in this film was offered to Frank Sinatra because contractually they had to. He decided to pass it on to the great Bruce Willis. Now, in the book, Nothing Lasts Forever, our protagonist is estranged from his daughter, who works for this corporation. In the book, his daughter's name is Stephanie. But in the movie, well, in the movie, they changed that character's name to Holly. Holly, one of the most Christmassy names you could ever think of. You want to give me Noel? Maybe that's a little bit more Christmassy, but then Holly is at number 2. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense rests. And in this court, the prosecution does not get a chance to make its case because we know we're right. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night. Ladies and gentlemen, you asked for a miracle. I give you the FBI.
It's gonna go. It's gonna go!
Bastards are probably pissing in their pants right now. Mayor's gonna have my ass.
Well, now that we've established that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, I could think of no one that I would more want to start the conversation with than my pal Cayley from Once Over with Cayley. Cayley, how are you? Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. And, you know, it's not really Christmas until the lights go out at Nakatomi Plaza. That's when you know it's actually the Christmas season.
It's true.
Now, you were on our previous episode talking about another fine Christmas film, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. This is one that's appropriate for a wider age range, but Die Hard also not for kids, I would say.
No, way too much drugs.
And I would like to, I think Ellis is kind of,
Ellis is a problem.
He's definitely a problem. He's very 80s though. There's a lot of stuff in this that are very 80s. And for our visual audience, I will show off my 8-bit video game, Yippee-Ki-Yay Die Hard.
Yeah.
And the high score is, of course, 1988, because this was that was the first Christmas where we could enjoy this film. So what are you wearing?
You're wearing your Die Hard shirt. I am also. This is my Die Hard Christmas sweater. Now, it might not look like much, but let me tell you, I have big plans for this sucker. So for the visual audience, you can see behind me that I have the character of Tony from Die Hard.
Yes.
Tony is one of the terrorists in Die Hard, and he is the infamous goes down in the elevator and has the "now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho" sweater on.
Yes.
And I have wanted to make this sweater for years and years and years. You can buy this sweater. I've never felt like that was sufficient. I always wanted to make my own. But what I discovered is that it has a very weird collar on it. It's it's not a normal crew neck sweatshirt. Kind of looks like it, but once you get in close. And so I got very, very, very obsessed with the fact that I needed to have the correct collar. And it's showing up, I think, a little bit blue on this webcast here, but it is gray in real life. So I now have officially obtained the perfect sweater to make the "now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho" sweater. And now I just need to write the words on it, which I haven't gotten around to. So for 2025 Christmas.
Yes, which maybe we'll talk about Die Hard 2 for Christmas 2025, although I have issues with that film, but that's neither here nor there. But now, if you are going to do a DIY version of this sweater, should I assume that you'll be using human blood to
Yes.
write? Okay, good. I'm glad. Yes.
It's the only way. I had to make it true to the movie. I needed the collar to be correct. So, of course, I must have human blood. The
I
blood of
have
my
to.
enemies, in fact.
Oh yeah, and we know a few of them. You know, we have some enemies in common.
Yes.
But I didn't notice the collar until you pointed it out. So I'm glad that you took the
Yeah,
time
this is,
to talk
look at how
about it.
similar it looks. I look exactly like Tony.
Yeah,
Look
but
at us.
you know, pre John McClane getting his hands on him. You know, so this is such a fun film, and you know, in the earliest days of the Bladtcast, one of the first things we did was the group of us. We did a live tweet where we all watched Die Hard and we encouraged our audience to watch with us, and we all tweeted. And that's when I realized that if you tweet, I think it was like 200 times in those days, Twitter would disable your account for a little while. So I had to start tweeting from another account because I had a lot to say, a lot of observations. And I think that the hashtag was Die Hard live tweet or something. So I have always been a big fan of this film from the first time I saw it. Yes, in the summer of 1988. But I thought that for the genre, this is basically a perfect film. For action movie, you know, good guy, you know, he's a little bit on the outs with his wife, you know, so that those elements are there. The interesting thing, the book, as I referenced in my intro, Nothing Lasts Forever, is actually a sequel to the book that the film The Detective with Frank Sinatra was based on. So because of his contract for The Detective, they had to offer him the lead in this movie. Now, he, of course, knew why they had to offer it to him, and he said, no, go ahead and make it without me. But this is the same character in the book. And his daughter is the person who works at the company in the book. Her name is Stephanie. As I stressed moments ago, her name is Holly in this. The most Christmassy name of all. I'll say it again. You know, the source material is great, and it turned into a tremendous movie. And this movie turned Bruce Willis into a movie star. He was on Moonlighting before this, and they were so nervous that he's not in the original advertisements for it. They didn't actually put him in it. But tell me your thoughts as to why this is a film that you celebrate this time of year, but of course all year round. But what are some of your favorite things about Die Hard, Cayley?
This is my number one every year Christmas movie. This is the first movie that was ever a Christmas movie for me. It was the controversial Christmas movie. Is it a Christmas movie or not? Of course it frickin' is. It is. Just that's the end of that question. But you know, it was one of the first movies that I saw that kind of had those themes. I hadn't seen it until I was much older in life. I don't know why. I had just kind of like missed out on it. And I saw it for the first time around Christmas, and I fell in love. And I think you hit the nail exactly on the head. This is the perfect action film. There is so much depth in every single character. There is never a time where, when I am stressed, I make fists with my toes. You know, the idea of making fists with your toes, setting that up for he's going to have to walk on glass. And every single little teeny tiny moment in this movie is amazing. It's climactic. It is exciting. It's funny when it needs to be. And I can't get enough of it. I watch this one every year.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's, you know, brilliant writing for, you know, it establishes the fact that, well, why does he not have shoes on? Don't worry, we've got a reason for that. And you know, there's the great joke about, you know, I kill the only terrorist with feet the size of my sister's, you know, and so that it keeps him without the shoes on, which I think is great. By the way, our visual audience is now seeing one of the pre-release ads, which is Nakatomi Plaza on fire. And it's just Die Hard. Look, a building's on fire. Don't you want to see it? That's how skittish they were about it. Are people going to turn up and see the guy from TV, you know, in this movie? And the answer was very quickly made clear that yes, we would. But there are so many little details, and also this film is incredibly funny. There are so many
Yes.
great one-liners. The guy walks up to him in the airport and kisses him, and he's just like, "Fucking California." And there's years before I lived here. I thought that was very funny. And again, for our visual audience, you see behind me one of my favorite lines in the whole film is, "Come out to the coast. We'll have a few laughs." I love that movie. That moment in the movie. I love the movie. What were you saying, Kelly? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it's so great. One of the first times that I actually went to LA, and I went to the Walk of Fame.
Sure.
One of the only stars that I actually cared about seeing was Bruce Willis's, because he had the Yippee-ki-yay. And so I actually took a picture of myself in front of that sign because I was so excited about it. I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Like, this movie is ingrained in all of our memories because it is the perfect action film. It has the correct amount of drama. It has the correct star. It has the correct amount also of like disaster film. Like, it has almost a little bit of those Towering Inferno elements. The cops are interesting characters. We don't usually get that, it's just great.
Yeah, and Reginald VelJohnson as Al Powell is amazing in this, and a lot of people know him from Family Matters, where he also played a cop. But he's so great in this. Yeah, right. Well, he definitely looks like a cop who should have a desk job. But there, like from the first time we see him in the convenience store, they're for my wife. He's buying all of these Hostess
The Twinkies,
snacks.
yeah.
And the guy's like, yeah. And the backstory is that his wife is pregnant and probably is buying it for his wife. But maybe he was going to dip in and have one or two, Kaylee. Let's be honest. It's okay. And his interaction with McClane, who he refers to as Roy for most of the film, that's where the Yippee-ki-yay comes from. The characters are so great. Another one of my favorite movie moments in the movie is when Hans is finally making his demands, and he, lists off that he needs members of the terrorist group known as Asian Dawn. And one of the other guys looks at him and he's like, "I've read about them in Time magazine," because all of their demands are just a distraction because they want to get into the safe there. And, just so many little touches like that, it's like.
I really like also, speaking of those little moments, there's a lot of moments between Hans and Holly. Hans seems to have a certain level of respect for Holly. So Holly, at one point, she goes in and she's asking for things like, "Hey, we have a pregnant woman. Can she please go on the couch?" And she says, "If you don't want it to be a mess in there, maybe you should bring us in groups to the bathroom." And Hans is receptive to that. And the idea of giving Hans, this very evil character, some sort of depth where he becomes humanized is a genius idea for an action movie. So frequently in action movies, people are just either good or bad, and that's all there is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is these guys are motivated. Like, no one is going to get in their way, but their badness is self-interest. At one point, Hans balks at being called, he's like, "Oh, you're just a common thief. And there's nothing common about me." You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, that's the part that offends him. It's like, yes, we want this huge amount of money, that's here. And by the way, I think the interaction you're talking about between Hans and Holly, that sort of when she asks for all those things and like, "Who put you in charge?" And she's like, "You did when you killed my boss." I think that's when he realizes, like, all right, this is a tough 80s broad with her name on the door, and obviously if she's married to a New York City police officer and married to Bruce Willis, you have to be pretty tough, don't you think, Kaylee?
Extremely.
Yeah. So there are so many characters that are, the Special Agent Johnson, no relation, the white guy and the black guy. And then the one Special Agent Johnson's like, "It's just like back in Nam." And he's like, "It was an 8th grade, asshole." The jokes, and that's what makes the great. Look, I'm not going out on a limb to say that probably the greatest blockbuster action movies ever made were in the 80s.
Yes, I would agree.
And they have that measure of actual suspense, violence, deaths, gunplay, but the jokes go a long way. Imagine this and Lethal Weapon if there were no jokes in them.
Well, and that brings me to one of my favorite characters in the whole movie, which is Argyle.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, no one saw us coming. Oh, except for the asshole over there in the doorway, or whatever exactly he says. I do love Argyle. He's phenomenal. No, I'm confused. I'm sorry. Argyle's the car driver. I was racist without even knowing it. I mixed up Argyle with the other black guy, who, by the way, is who else is going to be able to punch that guy besides Argyle? Yes, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. I love Argyle, the car driver.
I love the idea of having a good guy on the outside that is helpless. That's a really interesting element to an action film that we don't always get to see. So Argyle kind of figures out, for a long time, he doesn't know what's going on. He's just kind of waiting for John McClane to, come downstairs if he doesn't hit it off with his wife, Holly. But Argyle starts to realize what's going on in the building. And I love when he comes into the movie. I love how he comes into the movie. I love the opening scenes when he is driving John McClane back from the airport over to Nakatomi Plaza, and both of them are sitting in the front because neither of them know how anything works. It's adorable.
Yeah, it is. And I love the moment when Argyle looks in the rearview mirror and the gigantic teddy bear's there, and he's like, shut up.
Yeah.
And yes. So Argyle is an amazing part of this story. Theo is the character that I was thinking of, the computer nerd on the team, and he's also
great.
He's phenomenal. He's incredibly well written and smart assy in the way that he's the one member on Hans's team who knows like he needs me. You know what I mean? Like, because you need the computer guy. You kill everybody else, but you need the nerd, or you're not.
The nerd has to be protected. He's doing all the hard work, and he's having fun with it. Like, you can see how joyful he is when he's successfully hacking computers. I love it.
Yeah, and obviously, as we peel away to the real world for a moment, the actual performances. In this film, I mean, we're talking earlier about Bruce Willis. Alan Rickman is great in, I would say, everything, but he's perfect in this. He's never better than he is in this. And it's not that he isn't great in other things, but this is just amazing. And he's that balance of and we have that moment the first time you're seeing it, when he switches to the American, oh my God, you're one of them, don't kill me. He switches to his American accent, and
he's so talented. This is the movie that I fell in love with him. This is the movie where I was like, holy shit, he's incredible.
Yeah. And he couldn't be any more different in Galaxy Quest, but he's also perfect in Galaxy Quest. And you have this cast of characters, you have this sort of epic heist, and the beautiful behind the scenes of it is that these towers are on the Fox lot here in Los Angeles, and they were under construction at the time, so it was easy to film there. It's like, let's work that into the story, and I love practical stuff like that they, when they do it. So that's I thought that was a lot of fun, because look, the towers are a big part of this movie because of how much they get used and abused by John and the terrorists, right, Kayley?
A huge part. I actually just got my very first advent calendar. It is the Nakatomi advent calendar with Hans Gruber falling down one notch for each day.
Yeah. What was the Nakatomi Plaza you were showing me before we started?
That's my advent calendar.
That is the advent calendar.
See it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because now you have the virtual background, but
yeah, I know it hates me now. Can you see?
Yeah. Oh no, we can see it perfectly. Yeah, that looks great.
Hans. Oh, now you know what day we're filming, but he falls down.
True. Yeah, that's right. Everybody knows. So yeah, whatever day this is, you'll see where it is. So that's tremendous. And I know
it's it's little Jew's first advent calendar is what that is.
Well, I'm glad that look, if you're gonna go big for the first one, you don't want to go home. You want to go big, and I guess, if we're going to talk about all the characters and the actors, I mean, look, this really is. I think the thing that the studio was missing was how great Bruce Willis is and how great he was on Moonlighting. It's
Yeah.
kind of like it's an okay show. I don't think it's held up at all. The interaction with him and Sybil Shepherd is what made it, and I mean, he is just a tremendous talent that I think did not get the appreciation that I think he needed. He certainly got it after this, though.
I was going to say Happily Die Hard brought that around because everybody fell in love with Bruce Willis after this movie.
Yeah, and we need to shout out the actor William Atherton, who is the TV reporter Richard Thornburg, who manages to be an asshole in Ghostbusters, and now a bigger asshole in this movie.
Yeah.
And the 80s was a great decade for assholes, Cayley. And
especially news reporter assholes.
Yeah. Part of my issues with the second film is that it didn't really make sense for him to be in it. But as a kid, when I went to see it, I'm like, oh yeah, he's back. And he gets tased by Holly when he's in the bathroom, all of that. And I did like that he had fallen on hard times for the second one. So yeah, and I mean, the actors portraying the other terrorists, I don't know who any of them are, but I think the mixture of them is kind of perfect.
They're all great.
The presence of them works so well.
They all seem like they would collude together to do what they're doing. I believe perhaps that's one of the things that I like so much about this movie. I believe every single second of this movie. There is not a moment in this movie where I'm not like, yep, this is happening. Yep, that could happen. And despite the fact that Bruce Willis does some pretty incredible things, like busting through the window, despite the fact that he does some pretty incredible and unbelievable things, I believe every single second of it.
Yeah, no, him with his shoes off, and he's used the fire hose and he's swinging, and and he shoots the glass, which, by the way, is another great line from this when Hans is trying to say in German, and then he's like, "Shoot the glass."
Yeah,
that's another. This has so many one-liners. It's so meme worthy. Everything is believable in this movie except for the fact that they're watching Notre Dame play USC on Christmas Eve. That's Thanksgiving weekend traditionally, but you know what?
I was going to say what's unbelievable. I don't remember any unbelievable things, but of course it's a sports thing that I wouldn't have noticed.
Thing.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Right, exactly. We have some mutual friends who'd be like, yeah, exactly, right? But
I had no idea.
And you know what? In the Die Hard universe, that was probably a bowl game that was being played. That was the Poinsettia Bowl that year, even if it didn't make any sense. But I do like that that's where the one terrorist is, trying to convince Al that he's an American. I had $20 on those assholes. The guy who looks like Huey Lewis, but isn't Huey Lewis,
All of your impressions for this have been spot on, can I just say? Wonderful.
Well,
I love
Haley,
it.
I've seen this movie a couple of times, and I was ecstatic last year when they put it back in theaters to go and see it.
Yeah,
and,
that was my first time seeing it in theaters.
Oh, I love that. And there is I've mentioned on this show a number of times, there is a sort of a revival movie theater called the New Beverly that Quentin Tarantino purchased, and they show everything on 35 millimeter. I'm trying to figure out, can I get to this movie on Christmas Eve at midnight and watch it and not turn Christmas into a disaster for my family, either on the 23rd or 24th? Because I would love to see it on 35 millimeter on that screen. Of all the screens in the world to see it on, also it's that one. One of my favorite, I'm sure that I've told you this story before, but I just love it so much. One of my favorite movies that I saw at the New Beverly, I've seen a bunch of stuff there, but I saw The Great Escape there. Oh, that's fantastic.
Nick Frost was in the theater, and it was like the most exciting moment of my life.
Oh, wow. See, I don't think you told me that before. Well, no, maybe you did. Yeah, that Nick Frost was there. But so that's good. See, and you don't live anywhere near Los Angeles, and you know how great
but you got to go
is.
anytime you're in if you're in LA, you're going to the New Beverly.
Yeah,
Like, that's not even a question.
I took my kids there to see the 1966 Batman, the sort of the big screen version of the TV series. And he's walking around, and some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. And that was great. I took my son there to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. My wife took him to see Willy Wonka, and he loved seeing the movies there, these older movies, but they also show these cartoons beforehand. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, he's never seen Woody Woodpecker before.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think of it, it was like when I was a kid, that's all that was on TV, was, so of course I grew up seeing, cartoons from the 50s, but, I think that this is a movie to be celebrated in a room full of people who also appreciate the fact that it's a Christmas movie. And as we say, Cayley, people that don't think it's a Christmas movie, they do not have to watch it on Christmas. They can watch it the rest of the year. Yeah. We give them a big thumbs down. But at the same time, it's like, why are you going to rain on my parade? Like,
not only that, a Christmas movie is just a movie that you watch at Christmas time. That's my criteria for a Christmas movie. A movie that I watch every year annually in the month of December is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's, I don't know, some totally random movie that has absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. This is a Christmas movie to me because I watch it every single December. It gets me in the holiday spirit, and it reminds me of how much Bruce Willis rules.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
That's great.
I know.
That's great.
He's tremendous, and we're lucky to have had him in our lives. I know he's not able to work anymore, but this and Hudson Hawk alone, and I think our friend Little Lemmy, Hudson Hawk, is one of her absolutely favorite movies. I think so. I think we'll have to do something about that maybe in the new year. Well, Cayley, I'm glad that you're here because we're here to celebrate Die Hard. Okay.
Yes.
We're here to celebrate it as the Christmas movie that it is. Yes, it's a perfect action film. All the things that we said, and it'll probably come up in some of the other conversations we're going to have, but we can close by talking about the TV version of this film. And the fact that the epic line, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, cannot be said on television. So they looped a yippee-ki-yay. You know what the TV line is, right? Yep. Yeah. Now, have you ever actually seen it that way? Or you just kind of know that's...
So I feel like I saw it once when I was a kid on TV, but I didn't even acknowledge what was happening. And then I was thinking back on it as an adult, but that could be a totally false memory.
No, exactly. And then the funny thing is that, he says the line again in the third film, Die Hard with a Vengeance. And actually he says it in 2 for sure. I think he says it in 3 as well. But so in subsequent TV versions, it's like, I guess we have to say it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, so the idea that, and look, they're just trying to have it match the way his mouth moved, which it's a lot of, this is hardly the first time that we ever see that. And as I'm vamping and trying to find it, I can only find it in Die Hard 2. So we'll look at that for a moment. But it's an important part of the lore of the Bladtcast that we talk about Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon, because that has been very important, an important part of the show over the years.
Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon.
And it couldn't sound less like him. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon. It's
they should have hired you to do an impression.
Well, fine. You know what? Making some sense here. Obviously, we can agree with that. Yeah, but it's like the voice that they have. It's like, is that the guy who dubbed in all the curse words in Scarface? Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon. But in any case, that's a part of the lore. Even the TV version, the edited for television version, becomes a huge part of
It's true. That's how much this movie has impacted all of us. And I do just want to make one more little point about why I think that this is a Christmas movie. And this might be a little bit weird. I might be totally wrong about this. It has always been my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong, or people in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong. It has always been my understanding that one of the New Year's Eve traditions is watching the Marx Brothers movie Duck Soup.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have never heard of that, in all honesty.
Okay, so I don't know if that's just like, I'm from Rochester, New York. I don't know if that's just like a Rochester thing. I don't know if that was just like somebody in my family made that up and it was just,
wow.
I always thought that that was the tradition. That movie has nothing to do with New Year's Eve. But to me, that is a New Year's Eve movie. And so again, I want to reinforce the point. This is a Christmas movie. You made amazing points about why this is a Christmas movie. And you're right with all of those. I want to reinforce them with anything is an anything movie if we want it to be, because the whole point of movies is that they belong to us in our hearts and our souls. And so I love this movie, and it's my Christmas movie. And I'm so thankful that it is, because now I get to watch it once a year, and I probably wouldn't watch it once a year otherwise.
And I think that's the key. That's kind of the best part of the fact that those of us who celebrate it as a Christmas movie, we have an excuse to watch it. You know, it's like, sure, you can watch your Muppet Christmas Carol, you can watch It's a Wonderful Life, all of that, but you're like, not necessarily going to watch Die Hard. And the beauty of Die Hard, I could watch it in the summer if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch any of that. I'm not watching A Christmas Story in the summer. But yes, I think it's great to have an excuse to watch and celebrate what is a perfect movie. Cayley, we thank you for your time. Please let everybody know if they want more movie talk with you, where they can find it.
You can find me on YouTube at Once Over With Cayley, which is Cayley. You can find me on Patreon under the same name, where you get early releases of my movie reviews and also popsicle reviews.
And we appreciate that. And we look forward to having an excuse to talk to you again in 2025. So happy Duck Soup to you as well. Happy New Year. And we'll talk to you soon.
In this skyscraper high above the city, 12 terrorists have declared war.
They're about to be taught a lesson in the real use of power.
They're as brilliant
because I am interested in the $640 million in your vault
as they are ruthless.
But I'm telling you, you're just going to have to kill me. Okay. We do it the hard way.
Now, the last thing McClane wants.
Think, damn it, think.
Is to be a hero.
Where's Holly? Hey, Tucker! Where?
But he doesn't have a choice.
What does he think he's doing? Job.
They have already killed one hostage.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm wearing a pizza?
He's inside? Who is he? Who are you then? You are most troublesome for a security guard.
Sorry, wrong guess, huh? Would you like to go for double jeopardy?
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
You just destroyed a building. I am in charge of this situation.
Well, I got some bad news for you. Come up here, doesn't look like you're in charge of Jack.
He is alone, he is tired, and he hasn't seen Dippin' Squat from anybody down here.
Hey, pal, how you feeling?
All things being equal, I'd rather be in Philadelphia.
And you have it.
Only John can drive somebody that crazy.
He's an easy guy to like.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
And a hard man to kill. Bruce Willis. Die Hard.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew?
All right. Well, as we look to wind things down here, I want to bring in two return guests here to the Bladtcast. My pal Katie Hampton, who we have on very often and also is one of our regulars over on Marvel Movie Talk, except when she has the common sense to not see Kraven the Hunter. Good for you. Very smart. Wise choice.
We'll just say that it was because I've been too busy.
Sure. Too busy to see a terrible movie, as if that doesn't exist. And with her is her husband, Mark Hampton, whom we've spoken with before. And the idea of doing a Die Hard show, for this Christmas actually occurred to me last Christmas. Just didn't quite have the time because it was back in theaters. And I found out that the two of you have a wonderful Die Hard story, and I'll let whoever wants to start take the lead in telling this story. And in fact, I'm going to pop out and listen backstage because I don't want people distracted by me. Plus, they'll also get to see Nakatomi Plaza in the back.
Oh, there it is in all its gorgeousness. All right. Can I take it away, my love?
Go for it.
All right. So it was December 7th, 2017. Katie and I were on our way to see our friend's two-man sketch comedy show called Jake and Daryl's One Woman
Sketch Show.
One Woman Sketch Show.
I have that shirt too.
They were not canceled for that. There's been many reasons they should have been canceled. That's amongst them. But they have not been canceled at all, amazingly. So
shout out SoCal Karate Kids.
That's right.
2017 was a different time. I think it's important.
It was a different time.
Yeah, it was a lot harder to get canceled back.
Yeah.
It's very easy. Like using the wrong octane gas will get you canceled nowadays. But so anyway, we began. When I went into the theater, there was somebody in a booth like at the front door, and they were handing out name tags, and they had a selection of name tags, and they were pre-written with famous Christmas characters from media and fiction written upon them. And I saw the name tag John McClane because I am a diehard fan. I selected this one. I went and sat down next to a friend of mine, and I looked back to the seat behind me, and I was introduced to this lovely young lady, and she had the name tag on that said Hans Gruber. So I just looked back at her. First thing I ever said was, well, Hans.
And I said, oh my God, I just watched that for the first time this year. And he was like, what?
What? That's the first time you watched it?
Yes. So we got talking about Die Hard, and we have said pretty much ever since that we don't have a song, we share a movie, and it was Die Hard. And we kept talking about Die Hard and how amazing it was until the show started, and then we
and there was debate, and not like a passing thought. There was actually a consideration of making our first dance actually at our wedding actually to the original Die Hard trailer with O Fortuna in the background. No, not O Fortuna, Joyful. But we ended up not going that route. Ode to Joy, yes. Ode to Joy. Sorry, long day. Ode to Joy. We ended up not going that route, but it was a consideration.
Now, I love that. And for our audio audience, Katie held up a frame that has the Hans Gruber name tag. And the appropriate response, of course, is what happened. But second would have been if Katie had looked at you and her eyes gotten wide and said, oh no, you're one of them. You're going to kill me. And then we go, and she introduced herself as Bill Clay.
Bill Clay.
Here's the problem. I didn't know it by heart at that point. It had literally been the first year I had seen it, and I'd finally said, oh, I want to watch this because I was home alone. It was my only Christmas I feel like I was going to be home alone for, and so I watched that movie, and it was great. And he asked me, do you think it's a Christmas movie? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I don't understand why anyone would say elsewise.
So obviously, if you weren't going to have your first dance to the trailer for the film, there are some tremendous Christmas songs featured within the film, which is one of my points from the top of the show. If you had told me, oh, our first dance was to Run DMC's Christmas at Hollis, I would have needed a minute to collect myself. I would have gotten very emotional in a good way.
That would have been a good one.
Yeah. But there's no wrong answers in here as long as people understand that it is indeed a Christmas movie. Now, last year it was back in theaters pretty much everywhere across the country. They did one of those return engagements, and the way that I first found out about the two of your history with Die Hard is that Katie was mentioning that she was seeing it in the theater for the first time. Mm-hmm. And, it's easy for me to forget that not everyone is, pushing 50 like I am and didn't just go and see it when it was out in the theater because like, oh, this movie looks awesome. It was a little bit harder to see. So I want to know what some of the differences were for because Mark, I'm assuming you had seen it theatrically at least at some point, or neither of you had.
I never had. I watched it on VHS the first time.
Well, look, if you're gonna watch it, make sure that it's in pan and scan and
beautiful pan and scan.
Beautiful pan and scan. Well, so let me know what the two of you both thought, seeing it in a theater for the first time. Obviously, the bear that he carries off the plane is just so much bigger on the big screen, but I'm sure there's other observations outside of those.
Man, I loved it. It was like, I was like, oh yeah, this is how movies are supposed to be seen. And this is how like action movies of this time are supposed to be seen. They're supposed to be seen on a big screen. And it was because I watched it on a computer screen for the first time on a DVD. So, while I was home alone on Christmas. So it was the scale of everything, and especially when Hans is falling down. Oh, it was so much better. It was so epically cool. It was so great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big picture stuff, Mark, not really pun intended, but like the explosions and the just amounts of gunfire, all of that stuff on the big screen, you're like, this movie is great on any size screen. But when you are able to see it the way it was intended to be shown, yes, and even is that Oliver or is that
that's Oliver?
It is Oliver. That's Oliver the cat wants to get some comments in.
You went in on this?
I believe Tony was his favorite terrorist, which I'm sorry, Oliver. You got attached to Tony.
He doesn't often do this. So I'd seen Die Hard so many times. I mean, it's one of those movies that I could probably quote like perfectly to music. Like I could probably do it in time. I've seen it so many. But it was akin to seeing your favorite band in concert for the first time. That's the best way to describe it. It wasn't that I noticed anything differently. It was just the sheer scale, but I treated it like, every line that came out. So now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. I mean, I think I applauded. I definitely applauded. Let's get together, come out to the coast, have a few laughs, like things like those were just like absolute like applause lines. And it was cool because the other people in the theater were like giddy about it too. So I felt like more like a giddy kid watching this violent movie. So it was beautiful to see the scale, and you really get a good sense of how incredible John McTiernan was as an action director, especially in like the 80s and the early 90s. Like, he doesn't often get talked about. That dude was pumping out hits, like 4 excellent genre films in a row that are classics. And that was really exciting to watch. And I think the vulnerability of Bruce Willis came through a lot more on the big screen too, especially the scene where he's picking out the glass of his feet and he's talking to Al about how he's basically taking responsibility for his marriage dissolving and how he could never actually like be the husband she wanted and yada. And his vulnerability really came through in that scene, and I really appreciated just like it felt more intimate. And
it felt more visceral. Like everything, like the hits hit harder. The shots exploded faster. It was so much, and especially towards the end when they're finally out of the building, and then there's that one last guy that they take out, and you just cheered. I cheered so hard when Reginald VelJohnson just like poof him away. Oh, it was so good.
And when Holly punches
the
reporter.
Dick Thornburg.
Yes.
Thornburg.
Which
or Mr. Pecker from Ghostbusters.
I was gonna say I talked about this in the earlier conversation with my friend Kayley, that to be known as the guy who played such a big asshole in a classic 80s movie, and then to go and be an even bigger asshole in another iconic 80s movie, obviously the rest of his career we don't even need to look at, because he had those iconic roles. And the way I always talk about Die Hard is that it's hard to convince me that the 80s wasn't the golden age for big budget blockbuster action films. There's a lot of words that have to be strung together for that to be true. The fact that it's the decade that gave you Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, you almost don't need more. But we can go into Cobra, we can go into a lot of Schwarzenegger stuff. There's no shortage of examples. And to me, this is the perfect action movie because the characters are so rich and they feel realistic, and they're also so funny. There are so many jokes throughout this movie. And I mentioned this earlier, but one of my favorite things is when Hans is asking for his demands and he mentions Asian Dawn. And they just look at him. He's like, I read about them in Time magazine.
Such a great line.
Yeah. I love all that. And, we didn't talk much so far in this episode about somebody I wanted to make sure that we got in there, which of course is Ellis, who is just the perfect 80s bro douche that you don't actually hate him, but you're like, oh,
he's still funny in a way, but you're like, oh, but he's not a good funny. No, you're gonna ruin someone's life.
Yeah, this son of a bitch doesn't understand the kind of deal he's trying to make here and how useless he really is. And John tries to talk him out of it. And another catchphrase, of course, is Hans, booby. And just his very matter of fact, I could give them to you. And then he wants to get a Coca-Cola in a glass, which is not the first Coke he consumes in this film. But this might be the movie that let me understand how that actually works. It's like, oh, okay, that's how you
consume it.
Thanks, John McTiernan. But it's a tremendous story. And at the heart of it is this relationship with John McClane and his wife, Holly. And again, I'm reiterating because I'm with the two of you now. Our audience has already heard me say this at least twice. But in the book, Nothing Lasts Forever, the character is named Stephanie. And for the movie, her name is Holly. You don't need any more facts to tell you that this is a Christmas movie, that they chose to name her Holly. And it's, it's fascinating because I don't know if you guys know the backstory, that the book that it's based on is a sequel to the book that the film The Detective was based on.
Yep.
So they had to offer this movie to Frank Sinatra.
Right.
And I still would love to be able to peek into a parallel universe where he said yes. In his late 70s, and he's chugging around and trying to do this, but the chairman knew that this wasn't his project.
Would have been a much bigger vent, I think.
I think so. Yeah, we're gonna need a bigger vent. Let's talk, and you guys have both touched on it. Let's talk about Bruce Willis on this. I was mentioning that the studio got a little antsy about having him be the star of this film. So the early promotional materials don't actually have him in it. He's in the trailers, but print ads just had the towers and the fire. And I think it was just all you needed to do was watch 5 minutes of Moonlighting to be like, oh, this guy really lights up the screen. And Sybil Shepherd is no slouch, but yet he's stealing that show from her every time he's in there.
Every damn minute.
So, I mean, this was a guy who was, he was born to be in films, and, it works for him to be an action hero in an age when action heroes looked like Arnold and Stallone.
Right. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Mark. Yeah, go ahead.
That was a point I was going to bring up. It was the beginning of the pivot from the big muscle-bound action heroes to a different kind of hero. John McClane kind of sat in this weird window in between where, he wasn't muscle-bound, but he kind of had a tough guy approach, a grisly exterior. He was a smart ass, and that kind of paved the way for more of the quiet, contemplative hero that we started getting in the mid-90s with Keanu Reeves and Speed and things like that, which I thought was interesting. But if you watch, and also, addendum, TV stars breaking into movies was just not a huge thing. It just didn't really happen back then, and when it did, it was a novelty. And I mean, obviously that's what happened with Bruce Willis, and there was no one where to go but up. He was just too damn good, but it didn't happen.
And I will say that one of the only other big examples from the 80s probably made this even possible, and that's Eddie Murphy, who excels in sketch comedy. And then they figure well, let's also have him be a cop. Right. So I think that you don't necessarily get this movie without the tremendous success of Beverly Hills Cop. And honestly, by this point, you also have Beverly Hills Cop 2. So
yes, you do, which was a more serious affair than Beverly Hills Cop 1.
And interestingly, I once went to an event at the Writers Guild where the screenwriter for Beverly Hills Cop spoke, and he explained how it was a comedy. They wanted it to be with Eddie Murphy, and then it started to fall apart. So then they pivoted, and then they start getting the movie ready with Stallone. And he wants the character to be named Cabretti in Beverly Hills Cop. And then there's another parting of the ways. He does go on and make Cobra, and then they go back to it as a comedy, and that's how we end up with the classic Beverly Hills Cop. But fun fact, he explained that's why some of the sets in Beverly Hills Cop don't actually make sense, because they had already started building the sets for the Cobra version of it, which then, of course, goes on to become Cobra. And honestly, I would say we live in the perfect timeline because we got both of those tremendous films, just very different films.
Very different films. And thank God for that.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts, Katie? As you know, obviously our appeal for Bruce Willis is probably just I would definitely get 6 to 8 beers with that guy. And I'd even let him sing songs from his album that he put out, The Return of Bruno. I wouldn't stop him.
I love his acting in this. It's honestly one of the things that when I first saw it, I think the most of the things that I've seen him in was very recent type stuff. It was, Red, Retired and Extremely Dangerous or something. Sure. And I still hadn't seen Die Hard by that point. And so I was just I don't know how good this is going to be. And I remember seeing it for the first time and being wow, he's actually got a lot more depth than I ever realized. And, Armageddon and all of that didn't quite give me the same Bruce Willis that shows up in this movie. Or Friends, his appearance on Friends. But I really enjoyed not just that, but also seeing it in the theater and just seeing how intimate McTiernan gets with him and how much he shows just in his thoughts of every single action he takes. And it's it was more taxing for me emotionally watching him go through this process again and fighting through all of these different levels of Nakatomi Plaza, because it was just so much more visceral, and seeing that on the big screen and his choices. That's what I was oh, wow. Yeah, I haven't really seen Bruce Willis do something like this.
In terms of really getting up close, Mark already referenced it. Our visual audience sees it behind me. Him in the vent, talking to himself. He's taking up the whole screen, and it's so tight on him, which this wasn't great for his hairline to get quite so zoomed in. But they fixed that for Hudson Hawk. Don't worry. They go ahead and they add the CGI hair for that.
And that's why Hudson Hawk is a perfect movie that everyone on the planet Earth loves unconditionally to this day.
I mean, I would say everyone should at least see it. And, and then
and then David Caruso's in it too. I mean, come on.
That's true. So, but that's where you get to see the physical pain of what he's going through in this moment, the emotional pain he's been dealing with, and his strained relationship with Holly. And it really is one of the iconic lines of the 80s. The come out to the coast, we'll have a few laughs.
It's one of the best ever.
And I always loved, he gets off the plane at LAX and the guy walks up and kisses him and he just is like,
California.
And
Yeah.
I didn't live here for years after that. And now it's like, I might even laugh a little harder, So,
I definitely did when that came up. I was like, "Ooh, that's a joke of its time," but at the same time,
at the same time, he's just like, look, there's other movies where that guy would have gotten punched, and
right.
John McClane's just like, I wasn't ready for that.
But that's such a beautiful choice for Bruce Willis and for that creative team, because he doesn't play tough guy in that moment, because we don't know anything about John McClane at this point, except that he's a cop. We've seen him on the plane. He's on his way. And his first reaction, this guy comes up, kisses this New York tough guy, and he doesn't even get mad. He laughs and kind of pushes him away, like, what the hell is wrong? Like, what are you doing? And then just like, California. And what a great choice for the character to play, like, oh my God, these people, as opposed to like, what the hell's wrong with you? But it's such a beautiful introduction to him as a character. It's like the dude can go without sweating the small stuff. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And, as the evening unfolds, we get to meet so many great characters. And my friend Kayley earlier talking about how much she loves Argyle.
Argyle's great.
You will hear no disagreement from me. Interestingly, since we've started looking at this over the last couple weeks, my friend Brian brought to my attention that Argyle continues to listen to the same Stevie Wonder song over and over again. So that tells me he just has like the cassette single, and it's all he's got, because he's in the parking garage. The radio's not going to work, so he's just going to keep listening again and again. But I do love Argyle, and the composition of Hans and his team is tremendous. I spoke earlier about Theo, the computer hacker, and who has no shortage of one-liners. Who stands out for each of you? I'll ask you first, Katie. Who stands out sort of from these supporting cast? Who, as we've mentioned, it's a very deep bench. It's a very strong supporting cast in this film.
It is a strong supporting guest. It's interesting. There is one guy that I know is a stunt guy who I think he's the one that gets the Nestle Crunch bar, and they were just like, just do something, and I think he improvised getting the Nestle Crunch bar and then opening it up and biting it before they start the whole mayhem. He's been in so many 80s films as a stunt guy, as one of those guys that like is the bad guy that they take down or is part of the Yakuza or some like crazy stuff.
Right.
And it was cool. I feel like as an adult recognizing that and seeing that for the first time, like, oh, this guy really worked. Yeah.
You're talking about the gentleman who hails from Mongolia. I do believe. I'm not trying to be like insensitive. I believe he is Mongolian, of at least nationality or ancestry. But he was always like a henchman in all the 80s movies. He's the guy that tortures Riggs in Lethal Weapon with the electricity. So like, good choice. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No. But he's just like, he's a really good stunt guy. And like, I love that he chose that moment to. Nestle Crunch was like what my mom and I used to eat all the time when I was younger. Like that was like our candy bar. So I don't know, just recognizing him pulling a Crunch bar, which I haven't had or seen in like ages.
It's funny. My daughter enjoys a Lunchable knockoff, where you can make your own little pepperoni pizza, and there is a Nestle Crunch bar in there. And I haven't had one forever, and every time I see it, I'm like, what is she gonna notice? Oh, and she'll notice if I take it. It's a great choice. Now, if only he had bitten into an Almond Joy, they could have turned it into a commercial. Sometimes you feel like a nut, and then the mayhem opens, and then sometimes you don't, and then you show Mounds, which no one ever wants Mounds. No one ever wants a coconut candy bar, for God's sake.
Hindsight, Christian. Hindsight.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, George Lucas could add that in. You could get,
and he would.
The team at IL. He's like. Actually,
Hans would yell no as he's falling.
Actually, I think it makes the film better if you take a look. I need to shout out the terrorist whose name is Eddie. He's played by an actor named Dennis Hayden. And you're like, who are you talking about? Oh, I'll tell you. The guy who looks like Huey Lewis. Everybody loves the guy who looks like Huey Lewis, to the extent that people have thought Huey Lewis is actually.
You stole my answer.
Oh no!
I didn't know you knew. I'm sorry. But Huey Lewis gets to be in Back to the Future. I think that he would have been impossible to live with if he'd been in both Back to the Future and Die Hard.
True.
But and I love his Americanized. God damn it! I bet $20 on those guys.
On this game.
Yeah. And that is, of course, something we pointed out earlier, that in a nearly flawless film, people do shine a light on the fact that Notre Dame and USC would not be playing on Christmas Eve. But I addressed that earlier. I said my answer is that in the Die Hard extended universe, there was a poinsettia and USC and Notre Dame were playing in it. So you see, I even have answers for that. Someone pointed out to me, actually, it was my same friend Brian pointed out that the film Ricochet exists in this universe because I think the TV reporter is the same character. So there it is.
Out.
Yeah. I haven't had a hankering to watch Ricochet in a while.
If you want to go see Denzel Dong, go rent Ricochet.
Well,
what?
You sold me on that. You're not getting that in Gladiator 2, but
rats. But apparently he reads a newspaper.
Sorry to give you a spoiler there. For
such spoilers.
All right.
So go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to because Katie's, I love her small character favorite, and yours and mine were very similar. I love the Huey Lewis looking dude, but it also goes, but there's ample choices because I love the LAPD captain that was, the working for the Dukes at Trading Places, and he was the principal and Don't You Forget About Me.
No, that's the Breakfast Club. Yeah,
Breakfast Club. Yeah.
So he's great, but I think I can count on one hand the number of movies I've seen where everybody wasn't just perfectly cast, but they brought such visceral memory to each role and to each moment in the movie. One of the few so Die Hard, I think, is one of them. The other one that I could think of off the top of my head is Back to the Future Part 3. They went and got every classic. I've been in a trillion Western actors, and they were all character actors, and every damn word that came out of their mouth was just inspired and hysterical. And I feel like Die Hard is the same way, from LAPD captain to Al to all the terrorists, from Theo to Huey Lewis to Alan Rickman to the people in the office, and then just the supporting cops. You had the one guy that I cannot remember his name. He plays XO in Hunt for Red October, and then he's in Die Hard 3 playing a detective, different character, but he's playing a detective. Just those guys, from the guy that's Johnson & Johnson tell to turn off the 14 square blocks, the city grid, and he's like, I'm in Nakatomi, you got to do it now.
Well, by the way, the guy you're talking about who places the call, I want you to close down grid 212. That's a stand-up comedian named Rick Dukeman. So I know who he is because I had seen him do stand-up, and I was just like, oh, even he is somebody. And by the way, Paul Gleason is the actor you're talking about, the LAPD chief, and also
Paul Gleason.
The principal.
Never remember his name.
Well, he knows he's that guy, but and I'm agreeing though that everybody that Special Agent Johnson, one of them is Robert Davi. I don't know the other one.
I don't either. But Rob Reiner and Penny Marshall's daughter is in the movie. She just worked for the TV station. She had like 2 or 3 lines.
Right, yeah.
She's Betty Spaghetti in A League of Their Own.
Yes.
Everyone kind of shows up in this movie, and they're all phenomenal. They're incredible.
Yeah, and we were talking about Dick Thornburg earlier. How, of course, how terrible he is. But there's also the simple fact that we know he's a scumbag, but we get to the moment in the film where he's trying to film at the house, and the housekeeper does not want to let him talk, and then he chases the cameras away, and he's like, Do you want me to call the INS? And you're just like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
William Atherton is his name, by the way.
William Atherton, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and it's
good writing too, because he's portraying him as a prick, but in terms of choices he's made, aside from just kind of getting into it and you clearly seeing that the office doesn't like him, the choices he's made haven't defined him as a major asshole yet. But when he does that, you're like, oh yeah,
he'll do anything.
This guy.
Yeah.
And then how it absolutely,
and then how Holly gets to do it
ruins everything for Holly.
Yeah. Well, and he even has a great line after he gets punched in the face. Did you get that?
So good.
No, it's filled with all these tremendous characters, so many great lines. It's fun, it's funny, and you put yourself in situations that he happens to make the choice to make the fists with his toes, so he's walking around without shoes. So you get the great moment from Hans, the shoot the glass. All of it stuff that when it was hard to rewatch movies, when you couldn't just put it up on your phone, these things would all live in your head as you'd replay the movie. And I think it really is the best reason for it to be a Christmas movie. My friend Kayley made this point earlier, is that it gives you an excuse to watch it every year. Because if it's a summer blockbuster, you don't necessarily, every summer we have to watch it, so it being celebrated as a Christmas movie, I think makes it.
I would like to make a point on that too, Christian, if you'll allow me. You feel free to
please. No, I will allow it.
If you
I'll
want.
Allow it. No, it's fine.
I know there's a variety of opinions on the Geekscape network and just the general ether as it is about the whether or not Die Hard is the validity of Die Hard being a Christmas movie. And this sounds like Matt Kelly you're referring to. Matt Kelly and there might be others as well.
Okay.
But listen, I honor and respect everyone's thoughts on this, and at the end of the day, it's just a movie. It means a lot to us, but it's just a damn movie. Why people's blood pressure should go up over something so ridiculous and arbitrary makes me beside myself. But I'm going to make a grander philosophical point, if you'll allow me.
I will.
The beauty of art, and this movie was just made by brilliant artists across the board. And a lot of times we forget that when we're watching movies, even though it's so clearly art, we forget because
especially when we're watching Craven the Hunter or Madam Web. It's
exactly. It's very
recent examples are hard. Yeah.
And by the way, those movies are made by incredibly skilled, talented people.
Yes.
And somewhere along the line, it screws up, but 99.999% of the people involved in those films are at the top of their game. That's how hard it is to make a movie. So I'm not one to trash movies, although Craven, come on. But but on a larger philosophical notion, art is beautiful because once the artist releases it into the wild, into the world, it becomes a different thing. And it is almost never quite what the artists either intended or think or even imagined it might be. So you can make a case, perhaps, that Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie, but it had so many Christmas attributes that through time, through the evolution of audiences and how we view things, it has become a Christmas movie, even if that wasn't the intention to begin with. It has become so. It exists in the zeitgeist as a Christmas movie because, to Kayley's point, it's a reason to watch it every year. We watch it every December 14th on our dating anniversary. Excellent. But it has all the characteristics of a Christmas movie and then became adopted and became its own form of new Christmas movie. The Christmas action movie with the hero. Everybody kind of wanted to be Die Hard because they celebrated that movie and the fact that it took place at Christmas. So my point is, art becomes something different once it is released into the world. And even if the intention wasn't for it to be a Christmas movie in the beginning, it has morphed into such as audience tastes have evolved. That's all I'm going to say.
No, I agree. And the point was made earlier that, we're saying it's a Christmas movie. We want to see it. We won't make other people, you don't have to watch it. There are plenty of Christmas movies that, not everyone watches White Christmas and Miracle on 34th Street. And, you don't watch them all every year. This is the one that's important to you. It's one of the ones that's most important to me. So I usually try to find the time. I hope that I'm able to pop on over to the New Beverly on the 23rd and see it that evening. That's my hope. But something tells me I'll run out of time and I'll be, watching my DVD while I'm wrapping presents for the kids.
Whatever you do, just make sure you have popcorn with you, because honestly, we got popcorn when we saw it in the movie theater, and something about it was just like, oh, this feels like a really great kids' night at the movie theater.
Felt like why we used to go to the movies. Yeah. Sometimes I don't feel that anymore. Even for the movies I'm excited to go see, but there was a majesty about that film.
Entertainment is, I think, the key ingredient.
That's the key, yes. And in the year of 2024, the year of our Lord 2024, and a year that's just been brimming with movies that, let's just say, in the spirit of the season, I'll be slightly less negative. I was disappointed by a huge number of movies, and that's why the ones that stand out. I loved Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2. I thought was great. We saw it with the kids, So there's the Deadpool and Wolverine. Katie and I might have talked a little bit about over there on Marvel Movie Talk. And so when you find a film that you love, you celebrate it. And if somebody has their tradition, maybe similar, interesting, Katie, when we started this part of the conversation, you talked about how you were home alone on Christmas, but your decision wasn't to watch Home Alone. It was instead to watch Die Hard, which, by the way, I commend that choice. I think
Thank you very much.
It would have been a little too on the nose if you had watched Home Alone while you were in fact home alone. Now, I am not a tremendous fan of Die Hard 2 compared to some of the others. Well, really compared to 3, but it is also a Christmas movie because it's also set at Christmas. None of the other ones are Christmas movies, but if someone wants to watch, even if they want to watch all 5 of them at Christmas, go ahead.
Now, do you know the original ending that they actually shot for Die Hard 3? Have you heard of this?
It was on the DVD, but I saw it like 20 years ago when I got it. I don't actually remember what the ending was.
The last scene is John finds Simon at his hideout in his lair.
Yeah.
It's Christmas Day.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, the actual ending in the film is so much better. That's one of those where you're like, ooh, yeah, that's good that they thought the better of it. And I always point to Die Hard with a Vengeance for being tremendous because they just took a great action script and turned it into a Die Hard movie. My problem with Die Hard 2 is it's a lot of like, remember him? Look, he's back. Oh, look over there. They're back. And like the story in and of itself is fine, but it's just it's a bit much. At least they just had Al on the phone.
Yeah, they had Al on the phone. They had Sipowicz from NYPD Blue, Dennis Franz.
Big shout out to Dennis Franz.
They have my father's childhood neighbor and very good friend, Fred Dalton Thompson, who ran. He was a very close friend of my father's. And,
he was the DA on Law and Order when I worked on Law and Order Special Victims Unit. So
no way!
Oh wow!
Oh yeah!
Very cool.
So the great Fred Dalton Thompson.
Fred Dalton Thompson.
Yeah. So look, there could very well be be an episode next Christmas talking about Die Hard 2. I can't guarantee that it won't. And I every time I don't rewatch it often, but every time I do, I try to manage my expectations. And there are tremendous sequences in it. Star Trek nerds shout out that Cole Meany is the pilot of the plane. So, I get to see Chief O'Brien. So, that's like, is this movie really that bad? Look, Chief O'Brien's in it.
Exactly.
So.
It's not that good, though.
No, it's really not. Yeah. And also based on a book, but the book is not as good as the book that the first Die Hard is based on. And the less said about parts 4 and 5, probably the better.
What are those? 4 and 5. There's only 3 Die
I haven't
Hard
heard.
films.
Yeah,
I've never-
well, I have the set of the trilogy on standard def DVD. No Blu-rays for me.
Fan fiction, Christian.
Yeah.
Somebody sold you a bridge. You know what? Those aren't real movies.
Especially during the 5th one, it kind of felt like that. Like
I got 15 minutes in and I was like, I can't do this. I wish I'd done it with 4. I'm going to do it with 5, and I turned it off. And I don't even know.
I honestly haven't seen 4 or 5. I've seen maybe 10 minutes of 2 and fell asleep and woke up at parts, and like I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
Well, loved 3.
Now I'm convinced that next year you'll both be a part of a conversation about Die Hard 2, because now I want you to see it. Mostly because I want you to agree with Mark and I that it's a little bit of a letdown.
She will.
I know I will, and that's why I'm like, why put myself through that?
Wow.
Yeah, listen, it's no Craven the Hunter.
No,
sure,
I would say
it's not
Madam Web. Yeah,
I would much rather see Die Hard 2 than Craven the Hunter, Madam Web, Megalopolis, Borderlands. I could go on. Venom 3.
You already did on my podcast.
There's not been a plethora of action movies to come out lately that has touched my heart in the way the Die Hard series, but even Die Hard 2, because even though it was like Rennie Harlan, there's something about 90s action, especially early 90s action. I still love it.
And the humor of it, not being overdone, not really, it's being like very true, very grounded, very of the moment for an actual character that feels backed with that sass. Anyway, go ahead.
Bruce would only give him one take of comedy. He would only give them one take. They would, because he wanted to play John Strait and serious in this one. And the producers were like, well, you got to give us. And Rennie Harlan and him came up with the thing. You get one take every time, and they used every one of them.
I would.
Every one of them.
It's gonna be.
It's great delivery.
It's gonna be better than not having it. And by the way, shout out to Rennie Harlan, because I was recently a guest on a podcast where I got to sing the praises for The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, another great early '90s, a 1990 film that he directed with Andrew Dice Clay. Anyway, Katie, a moment ago, you mentioned your podcast. This seems like a great time to let people know where they can find that, including what is people are saying it's the greatest episode that's ever been done of your podcast.
People are absolutely saying that. It is hysterical, and it is all about movies, but just this episode only. But my podcast is Napping Through Happy Hour. I host it with my friend Marie Brand, and we bring on guests such as Christian Bladt. So you might want to look up Napping with Christian Bladt.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure by the time this comes out, it will have already released. So
yeah, well, we're celebrating the perfect way for everyone to see and hear this is to have released it on Christmas Eve. So that's what I decided I would do. Perfect. And people can enjoy this episode every Christmas, because clearly it is a Christmas episode. And of course, Katie is a part of our regulars over on Geekscape for Marvel Movie Talk. And sometimes those conversations find their way into episodes over here on the Bladtcast.
Which I just found out about this week when you were on the podcast.
I used to record separate episodes for the Bladtcast about some of these same movies. And then I was just like, just do a bunch in both places, because I streamed both channels. So Mark, in addition to, I assume there's no updates on your Captain Sulu series that you mapped out 6 seasons.
Not yet.
Okay.
It wasn't Sulu. It was the Excelsior: The Next Generation.
I'm sorry. You know what? I apologize.
No.
I would love, but if you're working on a Captain Sulu, I want to hear about that too.
I would love to do that. Actually, I had an idea for a Star Trek sitcom, and then they announced a Star Trek sitcom, but like Tawny Newsom's behind it, so I'm so about it.
Full support.
The USS Oh My.
Yes.
But in addition to all things Star Trek, is there anything you'd like to direct people to find more of you?
Oh, if you'd like to see more of my idiotic ramblings, you can probably follow me on Blue Sky at Mark S. Hampton, or the other one at Mark S. Hampton. I don't post a lot there because we've been very busy with movie stuff. But one day we'll be able to tell you all about it. So
I can't wait. That'll be great. And I want to thank all of our guests throughout the course of these conversations about Die Hard. And thanks to John McTiernan and Bruce Willis.
My hero. John, if you're listening, I love you, baby. Come over for Christmas.
And thanks to Ellis, thanks to Argyle, thanks to literally everyone associated with the film. And we bid you all a sweet adieu with the greatest Christmas closing that I can think of. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yeah!
Thank you for listening to the Bladtcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Bladtcast. That's BLADTCAST. You can also subscribe to the audio version wherever podcasts are found. Like the Bladtcast on Facebook, follow @Bladtcast on Twitter and Instagram, and of course, the man responsible for what you just heard is on Twitter and Instagram @ChristianDMZ. I'm Farad Muhammad, and if you want me to voice your podcast intro, you can find me at Twitter and Instagram @FARDMUHAMMAD. We will see you next time on the Bladtcast.